We're here with Dr. Timothy Paul Jones from Southern Seminary. Thanks for joining us. One of the things I want to ask you is, after all these years, after studying the Bible, after going through some years where you doubted, why do you still believe? What happened to get you to this point?
Well, I was raised in a variety of churches in which there just weren't a lot of questions asked. We were told, very clearly these certain things happened, these certain things were true. That I was told that the Bible was preserved exclusively in the King James Version of the Bible. And in all of those cases, there just was not an opportunity to ask very many questions. And so I remember very clearly beginning to wrestle with that, coming to a point of really struggling with that particular issue, and starting to look at some of the things to do with that and wondering, is it really true? Because I'd never really had a chance to ask the questions. And then I got to college and started wrestling with those questions and started wondering about this. And it wasn't even a college that was attacking my faith. I just was suddenly presented with more evidence, with more information that I had never heard before. And during that time, I worked in the library, worked a 5 to 10 shift in the library. And I remember just getting out stacks of books and working through those books and trying to wrestle through, trying to find out what was really true and if I even believed it at all in that. And I never really let go of my faith, but I did have to reassemble the pieces of it. And because there were so many things, I realized that's not true. I've got to pull that out. But then how does it all fit together without that? And I remember over a period of time, faith kind of seeping back in and realizing, yes, this really is true, and there really are good reasons to believe that the Bible is really true.
I can just imagine in that church that you grew up in, they probably thought we're protecting our young people by making it this kind of just don't ask questions, just believe in us. It's almost this kind of security blanket. And now a lot of people are listening to this and they're leaders in churches and they're thinking, how to equip young people to be able to deal with the issues they face today. So what would you say to that? Obviously that didn't work out so good for you, but what can churches do, what can leaders do to help young people work through these things?
There's one basic principle I tell pastors and parents over and over, and it's this: make certain that when they hear a question from somebody who's a hostile coworker or a college professor who's attacking their faith, make sure that's at least the second time they've heard that question. Make sure they don't get any questions in a hostile environment that they've never heard that question before. In other words, what I'm trying to get at by that is you as the pastor, as the parent, you ask that question at some point before you send them out into the world. And that to me is one of the most important things of make sure they hear the questions first from you. So if you're recognizing that your child is going to be asked about why they believe in a biblical sexual ethic, then if you know that they're going to have that question at some point out in the world, you ask them that. Ask them that question. Push them a little bit. Make them think about it. If somebody out there is going to say, well, the New Testament wasn't copied reliably, then you ask them that question first. Make sure that you've asked them that question before they hear it in the world. And I think that's one of the most important things that I've learned as a youth minister, as a professor, and as a pastor, is that the students whose faith persists most strongly are those who had those questions placed in front of them in a safe environment before they went out into the world.
Yeah. Which implies that you're working through and you can actually answer those questions. So really the responsibility is on leadership. If we're going to lead, then we need to have something to say, answers to give.
I think that's right. I think it's really important that we help our parents. One of the things I work with churches to do is to develop a summer reading program for parents and youth in which they take a certain book, an apologetics book of some sort, and read it over the summer in a kind of a guided plan with their student. And what I'm doing in that, what I'm presenting that as, and it truly is this, is a way of equipping your students to be apologists. But here's what I also know is happening. We're training the parents as well, because they're reading it alongside their student. They're reading it alongside that youth, and they are learning as well.
To bring back to something you were saying, sometimes I use the imagery of being a tour guide. Sometimes when I travel to different places, I realize that the tour guide could just be telling me anything he or she wanted to, because I'm not an expert in it. I don't know anything about this building we're going into. And I think sometimes that happens with our students. They get into a New Testament class that's critical of the Bible, or they talk to someone, and all of a sudden they're being toured around these various issues by somebody who could be telling them part truths, half truths, or just maybe giving them right information with just skeptical presuppositions going into it. And so we have an opportunity to be the tour guide. And who do you want to be the tour guide? Someone who's faith-seeking understanding, or someone who is skeptical about the faith. I typically want to be my kids, my students' tour guide. And so this is just a reminder for all of us to dive in deep. If we're going to be in leadership, if we're going to lead in the church, we have to be thinking through these issues to equip our students. Thanks so much. Join us for the next segment. We're going to talk about apologetics some more.